Hi, everyone. So, we are going to look at an example of writing about the rhetorical situation. And we're going to use one of the examples in an article that we read for class about viral moments in 2025. So, first, it's important to remember that the rhetorical situation refers to the language, that rhetoric refers to the language that artists and authors use to persuade their audience. And the rhetorical situation surrounding a piece of writing or art, for example, refers to all the real world circumstances that led to the creation of that particular piece. So, understanding the rhetorical situation is kind of like understanding background information. It helps us better understand why an author or artist created a particular piece and what real world issues they were responding to in that piece. So, to get started thinking about this, you might write to yourself, based on our class materials, what do you already know about rhetoric and what do you already know about the term rhetorical situation? All right, so let's talk about some examples. We're going to look at one example that was featured in an article that we read for class, which was about different viral moments from 2025. And one of those viral moments is the kiss cam disaster, right? So if you didn't know about this for some reason, there was some kiss cam footage that went viral. It was from a Coldplay concert, and a non-couple was caught cuddling on that kiss cam, right? So when the kiss cam goes to them, you see them kind of like scurry off, and then that moment just blew up and had a life of its own after that. So if you didn't see that initial moment, if you had never heard of it, right, then you wouldn't understand all of the various parodies and jokes that have come from that original video. Similarly, if you haven't seen the characters in these memes that you see on this slide, then you wouldn't understand why they're kind of funny, right? So you need to understand a bunch of different background information in order to understand what is happening and what's being referenced here, right? And that background information is essentially the rhetorical situation. And if we think about the rhetorical situation, we also notice that if we dig a little bit deeper, anything that we are looking at and analyzing, its use of rhetoric is also kind of addressing or responding to deeper underlying issues. So if we think about this one, for instance, we've got these funny memes and parodies, but at the heart of that are real world issues. These memes and parodies are fun, but the Kiss Cam incident really went viral because it addressed several real world issues that people everywhere could relate to. So understanding those helps us understand that rhetorical situation surrounding this particular incident. So for instance, in this case, a lot of people could relate to this couple in that video getting surprised by that kiss cam because they assumed that there was some infidelity going on, and we maybe enjoyed seeing this couple getting called out for that supposed wrongdoing, right? So lots of people were feeling like justice was served because these two privileged people who seemed to be hurting their families by having an affair got completely roasted online. But some people have also highlighted how this viral fame went too far and caused more harm, right? So that's kind of the underlying issue. So understanding those real world issues and its follow-up like memes and parodies helps us build a better, deeper understanding of why this particular moment resonated with so many people. So this is a good example of a time when examining the rhetorical situation closely is helpful. So we can use an outside source to examine the rhetorical situation, because it's one thing to kind of know the background a little bit. It's a different thing to look deeper into it. And when we get into writing the rhetorical analysis paper, you'll all be digging into the deeper underlying issues that the song, speech, or poem that you're writing about address, right? And so when we're looking at those kind of deeper issues, that involves looking at the rhetorical situation. And specifically, we're going to look at the rhetorical situation and use an outside source to help us better understand it. So, what is an outside source? It is something like an article that addresses one of those underlying issues that makes up the rhetorical situation. So, that's what I'm talking about when I say an outside source. Where are you going to find these? Sometimes I provide them for you. So if we look at our discussion of a modest proposal, for instance, I provided that outside source for you. So you already had that background information handout. When it comes to writing about a song, speech, or poem that you have chosen for the essay, you're going to be responsible for finding your own outside source. So just something to be aware of. And then how are we using outside sources? In our class assignments and in your upcoming essay, you'll use an outside source to talk about the rhetorical situation surrounding whatever piece it is that we're looking at. It's important to keep in mind that for the essay, this is only one paragraph, so don't get carried away in talking about the outside information surrounding, the song, speech, or poem. Remember that it's only one paragraph. All right, so let's look at an outside source that addresses some underlying issues about this whole kiss cam video phenomenon. So I've got a link here. If you have these slides, you can click and you can have access to the full article here. But this article is called "The Coldplay Cheating Meme Was Funny Until It Wasn't. Now It All Feels Really Gross." And it's by this person named Georgie McCourt. So in this outside source, she mentions the video directly, but remember that in your own outside sources for our upcoming essay, you might find an outside source that doesn't mention your song, speech, or poem, but instead just takes up one of the issues directly. And that's okay. So it can mention the song, speech, or poem or the original thing, but it doesn't have to. In this case, this outside source mentions several specific real-world issues that are relevant here, and we're going to be identifying one of those and then making our own argument about how seeing this outside source along with the original thing that we're talking about helps us better understand the rhetorical situation or the real-world issues that are at play here. So when you're working with an outside source, it's important to first annotate it and see what stands out to you in terms of, how does this source help my audience or help me understand what real world issues are underlying this original thing that we were looking at. So you want to annotate with purpose by focusing on those things that are going to help you explain just some aspect of the rhetorical situation surrounding the piece. You also want to choose small excerpts, so focus on things that you can't explain yourself and keep them short, right? So you'll notice that my screenshots of my annotations are focused on just one sentence or a part of a sentence. We want little short snippets. It's also a good idea to keep MLA formatting in mind because we do have to include citations, right? So just keep track of what page number your quoted information occurs on. So using outside sources to talk about the rhetorical situation, you're going to do a few different things. First, we want to make a claim that helps our reader understand what you want them to get from the upcoming quote. In this case, we want them to better understand the rhetorical situation or the real world issues at play here. So for instance, my claim might look something like this. Before discussing the viral Coldplay Kiss Cam video, it's important to know the video struck a chord with so many because it addressed real world issues like infidelity, while also revealing our obsession with the internet, right? So that's an arguable claim. It helps my readers to understand how this background information is going to enhance their, experience of the original thing. From there, you want to introduce your outside source, but before you're using any outside source, make sure that you're including a whole bunch of relevant information, right? So is this thing an article? Who wrote it? What's the title? We can get all of that information in there so our reader knows where this quote is coming from. So for instance, I might say a Marie Claire article called "The Coldplay Cheating Meme Was Funny Until It Wasn't, Now It All Feels Really Gross" by Georgie McCourt can help us understand the underlying issues surrounding this video. So in that sentence, my reader knows, okay, a quote's coming up, and they know why I'm using that quote. From there, you want to signal that a quote is coming up and then get into the quoted information. So use the signal phrase and put the quoted info inside quotation marks. So my signal phrase is right here. McCourt explains one important real-world issue the video responds to when she says, and then I have the quoted information, right? So there's a lot that goes into using a quote. We want to make sure that we are doing that purposefully and that we're letting our reader know why we're using this quote, and we signal that it's coming up. After that, then you need to include an in-text citation. So an in-text citation is just a small citation that lets us know, that a quote or paraphrase was used and gives a citation for it. You need to include one of those after every quote or paraphrase you use anytime you're writing. For our class, we use MLA format. So MLA format for in-text citations basically is going to include the author's last name and a page number in parentheses after the quote. So for instance, McCourt is our author. Let's say it was on page 1, for example. A lot of the time you'll be using online resources and you can't find a page number. So a good fix for that is to just do a print preview to find your page numbers. So you can save it as a PDF or you can actually print it out and then identify, if it were printed, where that quote would occur and use that page number. All right, so if I put all of this together, if I'm using an outside source to discuss the rhetorical situation, I need to make a claim about the rhetorical situation, introduce an outside source, include a quote and cite it in MLA, and then add lots of my own explanation to help readers understand how seeing these two things together deepens our understanding of the whole piece, right? So I've got an example here for you of all of those things. So my claim is this first part. Before discussing the viral Coldplay Kiss Cam video, it's important to know it struck a chord with so many because it addressed real-world issues, right? Then I have the introduction. A Marie Claire article called, and I've got the title by this person, helps us understand the underlying issues. Then I get into actually including the quote itself, right? So McCourt explains one important real-world issue the video responds to when she says, then I've got the quote itself along with a citation. After that, I have explanation that helps my reader understand how this quote supports what I said in my topic sentence. So you can see that they all kind of work together. We're using that quote sandwich method to make a claim, support the claim with outside information, cite it appropriately, and then add lots of explanation so your readers are left with a nice, neat package of here's what I said, here's my outside evidence, here's, me kind of reinforcing what I said. So when you're writing about the rhetorical situation, those are the steps that I would encourage you to take. And that's how we're going to use an outside source to help us do that. So a quick recap. Remember that the rhetorical situation refers to real-world issues and other factors that led to the creation of a particular piece. For our purposes, we're using outside sources to help us talk about that. And we're doing that in one paragraph when it comes to the essay. Sometimes the outside source is provided for you. In terms of our essay, you're going to be responsible for finding an outside source on your own. Once you have that outside source, you should annotate it. Choose a quote that you'll use to help you connect it to the original piece, and then write that one paragraph explaining the connection. Don't forget to introduce, cite, and explain whenever you're using an outside source. And remember, for your essay, the outside source doesn't need to mention the song, speech, or poem directly. In this example, the outside source that I used is specifically about this incident, right? But in your essay where you are analyzing a song, speech, or poem, you might find that you find, an article about infidelity in general, if your song is about that. Or an article that is about something that the artist went through that you feel inspired the creation of a particular song, right? So it does not have to mention the piece directly. Maybe it will, but it doesn't have to. Just something to keep in mind. All right, I've got a bunch of resources here for you. So if you would like some more help with and practice with the rhetorical situation, there's a bunch of stuff here to help you with that. If you would like some support with rhetoric or practice with that, here are some links for you. If you are at a place where you need to find an outside source, there's a link that shows you how to do that. And if you'd like to revisit our information about making quote sandwiches about rhetoric and the rhetorical situation, I've got a link for you there. All right, as always, let me know if you have any questions. I'm always here to help.